Did you know that if you search the Bible and try to find a sermon that Jesus preached at a funeral, you can't find one? And the reason why is Jesus broke up. Jesus busted up every single funeral he ever encountered because the power that he has over death. We just celebrated Easter Sunday, that Christ destroyed death, that death now has no mastery over you, no power over you ever in your life because of Christ and what he has done for you. In Luke chapter 7, as Jesus was walking, preaching, and teaching, he encountered a funeral. It was the widow at Nain, and her only son had died. Now, 2,000 years ago, a funeral typically happened the same day or at latest the next day after someone died. Imagine how much harder that would have been for those who've lost a loved one. And so they would hire mourners, wailers, people that would make loud noise and cry so loudly so that people would know that someone died. Well, Jesus comes up upon this funeral and all the commotion, looks right at that widow, right in her eyes, and says, "Don't cry." How could he say that? It seems almost mean. Right there is her son, deceased, dead in a coffin, and Jesus looks at her and says, "Don't cry." Well, the reason he says it is Jesus knows his power. Jesus knows his strength. And in just a moment, he's going to raise that child from death to life. Jesus has power over death, both in the temporal and in the eternal. In the temporal sense, Jesus raised that boy from death to life and gave him back to his mother. But that boy was just going to die again. And so that's why Jesus didn't stop. He went to the cross. He stretched out his arms and nailed them, allowed them to be nailed to the cross to forgive that boy, to forgive you, to forgive me. Every sin, every wrong we've ever done in our lives. Jesus' lifeless body laid in the tomb, but then Jesus came out of that tomb to give the eternal blessing of life eternal. And so Jesus says to you, no matter what pain is upon you with the death of a loved one, he says, don't cry. Trust in me. Trust in my power over death. I will give you and all your loved ones who believe in me life eternal. Oftentimes in the Bible, names have meaning, describing significance of the person who has that name. In Acts chapter 9, we meet a woman whose name is Tabitha. Another name she has is Dorcas, which is rather unfortunate in the English language. But both those translated together mean the same thing. They mean gazelle. A gazelle is an animal that moves so fast, so swiftly, and with a lot of grace. And that was Tabitha. She moved swiftly, bringing grace, bringing favor to the widows in her home city of Joppa. Now, Joppa is a beautiful city on the Mediterranean Sea, and because it's on the sea, there's a lot of widows back then because of all the shipping accidents that happened. And Tabitha poured such love into them and championed their cause to give them aid. And then suddenly, she died, very unexpectedly. And all the widows cried out, mourning, "Why her? Why now?" When I was in grade school, one of my classmates' older brothers, he died while wrestling. And we all cried out, "Why him? Why now?" Whenever you lose a loved one, that's the instant thought that you have. Why them? And why now? It seems no matter their age that they went too early. And if God took them too early, that means that God could take me too early. We focus so much here as opposed to the blessing that God gave to our loved one who through Jesus is now in heaven. Imagine if someone came up to you and said, "I've got a private jet. It's just a couple miles down the road, and it's going to fly you to a remote island paradise. Beautiful blue waters, the winds coming in off the ocean. You've got this villa overlooking the ocean with an infinity pool that's there, and all expenses are paid. It's free. I don't know about you, but I'm getting on that plane. I'm going to go to there. I want to live there." And then they say, every week, week by week, month by month, year by year, your loved ones that are here, they're slowly going to come. A plane will come for them to join you on that remote island paradise. And when you arrive, loved ones that you haven't seen for decades are already there enjoying it. I don't know about you, but I'm getting on that plane. Friends, that's what happened to Tabitha. She got on the plane, so to speak. God sent the holy angels to bring her to glory. And yet God went to the apostle here and raised Tabitha from death to life. And all the widows in Joppa celebrate, Tabitha, you're back. I wonder what Tabitha's reaction was. Great, I'm back. And the widows yell, yay, you can take care of us again. You continue your work. And I wonder if Tabitha went, yay, I can continue my work. Friends, for all of our loved ones who've died in Jesus, they live in glory. They live in joy. The plane, so to speak, came for them. Let's celebrate that fact. Let's celebrate the fact not of our loss, but of their gain, and that one day God will send his holy angels to take you to be with Jesus and to be with them in glory. Right at the beginning of Jesus' earthly ministry, a man named Jairus comes up to Jesus and falls right at his feet, right before Jesus. Now that's pretty laughable. That just doesn't happen. And this guy, Jairus, was a leader inside the synagogue. Imagine the leader or president of your bank falling at your feet when you would go in and make your monthly deposit. It's laughable. It just doesn't happen. But this man knew that Jesus had power, so he didn't care what anybody else thought. His child was very sick and he needed Jesus to come and to help him. And as Jesus is going then to help and to heal this girl, a woman reaches out and touches Jesus' clothes as he walks through the crowd. And suddenly, she's healed. Jesus knew this and he stops everything and goes to talk to this woman. But what a laughable thing that she thought could happen, to just touch Jesus' clothes and be healed. We've been talking about healthcare in our country and how that's pretty messed up right now, trying to figure things out. But imagine if your healthcare plan involved you hiding in the bushes, and then when your doctor came out, you run by and touch the doctor's cloak, and then suddenly you're healed and you're better. It's laughable, but it worked because of the power of Jesus. When Jesus gets to Jairus' daughter, she's died. He didn't make it in time. And Jesus comes in Mark chapter 5 and says this, "The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. People laugh at you. Laugh at you because of your faith. Laugh that you believe that God created this world in just 6 24-hour days. People laugh that you and I believe that God himself wrapped himself in human flesh on Christmas. People laugh that we believe that because God died, that Jesus paid the ultimate price on the cross, that we'd be freed and we'd be forgiven. People laugh that we believe that since Jesus came back to life, that we have eternal life with him in heaven. But if people laugh at you, you're in good company, because they laughed at Jesus. But Jesus showed them his power as he raised that girl to life. And God shows his power as he raises believers to be with him, to take our souls to be with him in heaven. God has power. Trust in him. Let people laugh at you, because you have Jesus. Have you ever heard the phrase, when God closes a door, he opens a window? That phrase is meant to be very comforting and very encouraging, but you ever thought about that phrase? Why a window? Open another door. Why would God close one door and then make you crawl through a window? Have you ever tried to crawl through a window? If you have, I don't want to know that story. There's probably some shenanigans that went on there, some bad news, but you probably got hurt. Why would God close a door and open a window and make it hard? In 1 Kings chapter 17, God closed the door on the blessings that God had been given the prophet Elijah. Elijah went as God commanded, and went to the wicked king Ahab of Israel and said, "No more dew, no more rain until God commands, because of your wickedness." And then he became public enemy number one. God closed the door in his old life. Elijah was on the run. He had to hang out by a stream that was there, a little brook, but God opened the window and birds came in and gave him food every day. How cool would that be? That God would allow food to come in to your doorstep, like a delivery guy, every single day. But not with birds, of course, because the FDA would have a problem with the sanitary conditions, and PETA would think you're having cruelty to animals. But God brought that blessing to Elijah. And then suddenly, it dried up. The birds flew away, and God said, now, Elijah, I'm opening a window. It's going to be hard. You have to go up to a widow of Zarephath in the region of Sidon. That's where wicked King Ahab's wife is from. They'd have found out about it. God's putting him in a death trap situation. Elijah could have cried out, woe is me. But he didn't. He said, God, I trust thee. Where in your life is God closing doors? And you're frustrated. Frustrated because what you now have to do seems like it's a small little thing and it's a window of an opportunity, and you think, God, why? Why are you forcing me this way? Open this door back up. But who's to say that when you go through that window, that difficult time, God doesn't open up incredible blessings on the other end? Elijah went up to Zarephath, and he was there to be a blessing to her, for that widow's son died. And listen to her reaction. She said, what do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son? Elijah was there to give her hope, to give her strength in God of the Almighty. And God, by his power alone, raised that son from death to life. Elijah was there to bring a blessing, but it only happened when he was willing to go through difficulty. Friends, go through difficulty with trust, with confidence that God is almighty and he will bless. Throughout this week, I've been sharing with you incredible stories of God interrupting death and bringing life. And the final story I want to share with you is one that's very personal to me. It's from 2 Kings chapter 4, where a Shunammite woman lost her son. And Elisha the prophet comes in, lays his body upon this deceased boy, and the body of this boy grows warm. And even though he was dead, he sneezes 7 times. He comes back to life. In December, we aired a video where I got really real and really authentic with my pain and emotion of my wife and I losing our twin son, Martin Jonathan MJ. When we're in the hospital, it was this joy and brokenness where I'm holding my dead son, my deceased son, and then my daughter is in the NICU clinging to life. And as I'm holding my son, I can feel his body warm. And I know my Bible. And I started to pray, God, please, let him sneeze. Let him sneeze 7 times. And he did. Sometimes death remains. God brought that blessing to her, but this woman here, this widow, but God didn't bring that blessing personally to me. Not the way I wanted or expected. That video that I recorded touched so many hearts and lives because I was just real, open in front of you. Friends, we need to do a better job of being real before one another. We have this projection of perfection that because Christ is in our heart, that our lives are always going to be perfect, and they're not. There's brokenness, there's sadness, there's disease, there's death on this side of heaven, but there's also God. There's also Christ. Reach out to him. Be held by him. Reach out to others and be held by others and know that in Christ, everything is going to be okay.